Good evening, Sam. Good evening, Brother Sam. My greetings to you and your wife. And I apologize for taking too much time from your wife. I don't want your wife to get upset with me, and I don't want you either to get upset with me. So I just want to make my apology known because I don't want to cause any problems, you know. So please give her my respect and regards and love, and let your wife know that we get into real in-depth conversations about God, because God is life. God is the ultimate reason that we live. So I just really cherish you, Brother Sam, and your wife as my literal family, because you guys both are my family, created from God. I really hope that you had a chance to read my story of my passion for being a activist. That's my whole entire life. The passion I not only have for playing the piano, but the passion I have for activism. I have been given that gift from God, and I can thank God because my activism was stemmed from the time I was a child. And my dad, my adopted dad, as strict as he was in black and white thinking, I thank God that my dad raised me in unionism and being for the employees. I grew up watching my dad as a union shop steward, as a union negotiator, as a union secretary, vice president, all the way up. And I seen how my adopted dad had the passion for activism, and he could defend a person even at the poorest performance, regardless of what they were written up for. And I remember my dad, I went to him to a union meeting, and I was 16 years old. And I remember one of his members of the union who he worked with, she looked at me and she told my dad that your son, he's going to be a leader. And this was back in 1974, Brother Sam. And this lady said, and looked at my dad and said, your son is going to be a union leader. Lo and behold, I became a union activist right after I got hired at Sharp Grossmont Hospital in 1979. My dad told me once I got hired at Grossmont Sharp Hospital in 1979 to get my butt in gear and join the union after my 90-day probation. So I joined and was active with OPIU Local 30, and then OPIU Local 30 International I was involved in. Then 1991 is when Sharp Healthcare affiliated with Sharp Grossmont Hospital, which Sharp Grossmont Hospital became a private sector. Before Grossmont Hospital was private sector, it was public sector. Under the Brown-Myers Act and state law, unions could be small bargaining units within different departments, spread it all out. Well, when Sharp Healthcare merged with Grossmont Hospital, it became private sector. And the private sector laws within federal law because it's totally different from the Brown-Myers Act law. 8 bargaining units have to be organized together, not separate links at all. So I spent time with a good friend of mine who was a labor consultant. I worked with her as OPIU Local 30 and also an independent union. I worked with her, and so I learned from her as a labor consultant as well. And then when Sharp merged with Grossmont Hospital, of course, they kicked out the unions and we reorganized. So I spent my whole decade of organizing, and 1995 was the critical point in my revolution and organizing and being an activist. 1995 is actually when there were a lot of major changes with Sharp Healthcare. Sharp Healthcare was totally different back in 1995, much different than today. CEO Peter Ellsworth, the top president, he slashed and cut and downsized and utilized so much more so than today. Sharp Healthcare has progressed in a lot of ways, much more compared to the 90s. And nurses and workers and all of us had issues about their downsizing, not only the management, but downsizing the departments and cutting back on benefits, because Grossmont always had benefits. Well, you see, I always had a passion for being pro-employee, pro-union. And that's why I want you to know, Brother Sam, if you ever need help with any labor disputes or any issues, let me know, because I studied labor law at the City College in 2003. And I have a textbook, and I always keep up on the labor laws. You know, when I had you read my story about how I won my unfair labor practice, that was a big, major revolution change that I made a difference not only to the workers and families in the future, but I made a whole big difference regarding the management and the employers policy. Were forced to change policy, forced to change rules because they had to go accordingly to the law. Managers had to leave and be relocated because of what they did was write me up and discipline me for asking inappropriate questions in their eyes in an open forum. Sharp Healthcare always had open forums that we had with the CEO. For years, I was always the leader who took notes, sat at the very front seat, always asked questions to the CEO regarding the workplace, regarding budget, finances, expenses, expenditures, cost, all those things, and policies, procedures, all this stuff. So when Sodexo Marriott was taking over the departments of housekeeping, dietary, and engineering, because Sharp outsourced the ancillary departments of housekeeping, dietary, and engineering, 6 hospitals system-wide. Well, when that happened, then I still was allowed to continue to go to the open forums with the CEO, Michelle Tarbett. She always welcomed me to go continually. Well, I asked questions accordingly, and they were inappropriate in the employer's eyes, meaning in Sharp's administration's eyes and Sodexo Marriott. Well, the CEO got heat from people above, of course, and pressure. So she, of course, had me written up, and then the Sodexo Marriott that I worked for wrote me up for asking these inappropriate questions. And the inappropriate questions were, I challenged the CEO and Sodexo Marriott with the questions of the labor consultant firm I wanted to know about that they use against unions and preventing from unions coming in, and also learning how to cut costs and get rid of long-term employees. I wanted to know about more of the Sharp policies, how they are affected by outsourcing employees. Plus, I wanted to know about the campaigns that the companies were using in information. Plus, I want to know about the financial expenses, capital, in capital, as well as financial expenses. And according to the labor laws, I have every right to ask those kind of questions. Those questions weren't solo. Those questions were I was asking in behalf of other employees. And I was on my lunch, so I was off the clock. So I was legally doing everything legal, and I had my right within the National Labor Board Relations Act to ask questions in an open forum regarding the conditions of the workplace, which gave me the right, regardless whether I'm an outsourcing employee or not. So the union attorney took gladly my case in the labor board and filed charges against Sharp, its administration, CEO, and the outsourcing company Sodexo Marriott. It affected both of them because the Sharp CEO had to be hauled into court, and along with my Sodexo Marriott employer. And I went to federal court for 8-hour trial. And when the 8-hour trial, federal judge asked me questions meticulously. So did the labor board, so did the union attorney, and so did the employer, Sodexo Marriott. And Michelle Tarbert, the CEO, had to be subpoenaed and make a statement also. So the federal judge took 2 years to do my case. And we were not union, so I was an at-will employee. And, well, 2 years later, then I won. It ruled in my favor, and the federal judge finally ruled in my favor that Sodexo Marriott and Sharp were in violation of my union activities and concert group activity, asking questions on behalf of employees, because I was at lunch, on my lunch off the clock, and I had proof that I was off the clock. I'm very, very meticulous in my documentation. When I went to the labor board, I was dressed in a suit and tie, and I had a black suitcase that the union gave me. Well, the labor board actually thought I was a labor consultant. Okay, so I really gave first impression. And so, with all my documentation and policies and procedures and notes, I was all set. Well, when Sodexo merged with Marriott, Marriott was very, very nervous because they didn't want that to be a black record on their record. Well, they asked the judge how long was he going to take doing my case, and that really pissed the judge off. So the federal judge took more time on my case. So Marriott, when Sodexo merged with Marriott Healthcare Services, it put a black record completely, because what happened originally is that Marriott was the employer that Sharp chose to outsource ancillary departments, and then Sodexo merged with Marriott. Sodexo gets a certain percentage, Marriott gets a certain percentage, okay, in the financial track status. So anyway, they got fined by the labor board, and they had to post that labor board violation. It cost them $20,000 to take that written warning out of my file, which the federal labor law judge ordered for the employers to take out of my file. Plus, they had to pay union attorney fees and the labor board because they lost, which also made them have to, the CEO, Michelle Tarbert, had forced the managers of my department, Sodexo Marriott, to move. They had to be transferred and move out. Not only that, they were forced to follow along the policies to be changed in order to go accordance to the law, labor laws. And so my case can be read. It's online. I'm the famous legendary of what I left in my legend. Not only the union is still there because I brought it in, the workers still call from time to time and they ask me questions when I do see them. And so it is known, me, when I brought the union in and 2 other workers that were right aside, and everybody, after I won my case, stood right behind me. You know, Sam, I had a lot of opposition during that time. Everybody thought I would lose my case. They thought I would be let go. I refused to listen to anybody's, period. I went according to my own conscience and was guided by my conscience and my passion of what I felt. If I was the only person on earth to make a difference. That's all that mattered to me. It didn't matter whether I had a bunch of people follow me or lead behind me. I had a certain goal, and that's what I did. Of course, everybody, they were scared to losing their job, so they weren't going to, step up. But I was never afraid. I wasn't. I really was not. And so that's why I took the steps of doing what I did.